Hello friends, welcome back to Digitalk. In this video, I am going to explain you about the basic concepts of IP address, which is the very basic entity of a computer network. So if you are a beginner in the networking, or even not, even you are a professional, or even you are not working on the networking, you are working on some different technologies, it is very important for you to understand the IP address. And then inside the IP address, we have different classes, and then how we define the different classes in IP address, how to identify a particular IP address, if it which class exactly it is belong. Okay, and today we know that every organization is moving toward the cloud computing. So tomorrow, if you are going to work in the cloud as well, okay, for that as well, to work on the cloud, it is very important to understand the basic concepts of IP address and the CIDR. So CIDR notification, I have posted few other videos, and in future I am going to post few more videos, but in this video I am going to cover the basics of IP address, how we can form the IP address, what is the meaning of IP address, and what is the difference between different kind of IP addresses. So now we can relate it with the two real life things. Okay, first, if I will say you that how we can uniquely identify a person in the world. Okay, for that one we have identity card, which is issued by the government authority. Okay, so you can take that particular identity card, okay, and this would be unique for you across the world or specifically in a country. Okay, and second, if you will, I will ask you that how we uniquely send communication across the world. For example, if you wanted to send some communication to some person in the world, okay, then what exactly is required for that one? For that, we need an address, right? So we have two things. One is the identity of a person, okay, and second is the address of the communication. Similarly, when we talk about the computer networking, where we have a large number of uncountable number of devices, not only the computer, you have a laptop, you have a mobile device, you have a smart devices as of today. So every devices, those are connected over the internet across the world. Okay, so how the one device which is sitting in one country can identify a different device which is sitting in a different country, or maybe in the same country or in same city as well. Okay, for that, just like we have an identity of a person and then we have an address for the communication, we need a identity for the device as well, which is connected to the network, okay, which will uniquely identify the device, okay, and that is called a MAC address. Okay, so it is embedded in every device by the manufacturer, okay, and this MAC address is unique across all the devices we have in the world. Okay, so this is similar to the identity of a person, where a government card, our identity card, is issued by the authorized authority. Similarly, we have when we come to the networking and in the computer world, networking world, okay, we have multiple devices, and to each device, a MAC address is allocated by the manufacturer, which is unique across the world. Second, as we said that if you wanted to send the communication to a person in the world, okay, then for that we have an address of that person. Similarly, when one device over the network want to communicate with the other device in the network, okay, for that we need a thing that is called a unique communication address, and that we call as an IP address. Okay, so for each device which is in the network, we need a unique IP address. Okay, so many times the people get confused about the identity and the communication address, okay, because they think that the IP address should be unique, okay, for the communication. However, the term is a bit different. When we talk about the identification of a device, then we have a MAC address, and when we say that we need to send the communication to our devices over the internet or over the intranet, for that we need a unique communication address, which is called an IP address. Okay, so MAC address defines the identity of the device, but when we talk about the IP address, so IP address describe how the devices are connected to the network for the communication. Right. So if your device need to be connected to the network internet, you will need to get a unique network address from your ISP or network administrator. Right. So that means if you have a system, any device that you wanted to connect it over the network for the communication, right, for that you will need a IP address for the communication, okay, for your machine as well as for the destination machine as well, where you want to send the communication. Okay, so if you are in an organization, then it is the IP address are allocated by the network administrator for you. But if you are at a home where you are using your own personal devices, then your internet service provider allocate an IP to you. So an internal protocol access, which is called IP address, refers to a unique address for each device connected in a computer network using the internet protocol for communication. So it is also unique. When we talk about the IP address, it is also unique over the internet, or you can say over the internet, for the communication of the devices. Okay. So IP addresses are normally expressed in dotted decimal format with 4 numbers separated by periods, such as 192.168.123.132. So I'm sure you are aware about that one. How we can write an IP address is that in IPv4 format, we have a 4-digit numbers separated by the decimal. This is called the IP address. Okay. So an IP address consists of 4 set of octets, each bits per octet, or 32 bits. So that means we have an IP address which contains the 4 set of octets. So as I said, in an IP address, we have 4 numbers separated by the dots, right? So all 4 numbers that we have, that is called an octet. So each of the number is called an octets. Okay, so that means in an IP address, we will have 4 octets. Okay, and 4 octets and 32 bits. How 32 bits? Suppose that we have an IP address 192.162.10.25. Okay, so that means we have 4 octets in the IP address, right? And each octet will have a value of 8 bits. Okay. So now we have 4 octets, and each octet in the IP address have the 8 bits. That means we have a total 32 bits in an IP address. Okay, so do remember this thing. We have an IP address with 4 octets. Each octet is of 8 bits, and we have a 32 bits. That means altogether in an IP address. And when we say the value of each octet, that means if you see in the screen that in IP address, I have defined 192, 162, 10, and 25. So that means for each octet, there is a range of the value. Okay, that means for each octet we can define the value between 0 to 255. That means 192 value can go from 0 to 255. Similarly, 162 or 10 or 25 octet value can also go from 0 till 255. This is the limit for each octet. Okay, so that means an IP address is a 32-bit number, and it uniquely identifies a device on the network or internet. And how many if we talk about how many IPs are possible in IPv4 format, okay, so this IPv4 and then now IPv6, we have a different IP addresses format that we will discuss in later some other videos. Okay, but as of now, you can consider that the IP that has been assigned to your devices, it is a IPv4 address, okay, which is in the 4-octet format. Okay, and in IPv4 address, we have a total around 4.3 billion IP addresses are possible. Okay, across the world. That means 4.3 billion devices can have a unique IP address across the world in IPv4 format. And how we calculate the total number of IPs that is possible in IPv4 is we have a 32 octets, right? We have 32 bits in 4 octets in an IP address. So just we can calculate it as a 2 raised to the power of 32. If you have a mathematical background, then you are aware about it, how we can calculate the 2 raised to the power 2. But if it's not, that means we have to multiply 32 times. That will come to around 4.3 billion. Okay, so now you have a network and devices inside a network. So what you have, that means what I'm saying is that when you have a device, for example, you have a computer or a laptop which you are going to connect to a network. Okay, so that then you have 2 things. One is your device, and second is the network to which you are going to be connected. So across the world, we have an uncountable number of networks. It could be your local network, it could be a network in your office, it could be your network in your city, it could be a wide area network across the world, right? So that means the network could be a local area network, it could be in your home, or it could be in your office. Okay, and then we have a network in a metropolitan area network. That means you may have multiple offices in a city. Okay, and then you have all the networks are connected, all the local networks are connected with each other with the help of man. Okay, and then it could be a wide area network. That means we have a network which is connected across the world. So that means we have an uncountable number of networks across the world and n number of devices across the world. So how we reach to a particular machine or a device over the internet or over the network, which need to be communicate with each other. So for that, this IP address is divided into 2 parts. One is you can say the address of the device, and second part is the network address. Okay, so that means if any device need to communicate with the other devices over the internet, so first it will check for the network address, and once it will identify the network address, then it will identify the device which is running inside a particular network. Okay, so to identify a device on a network, you need network address and device addresses. So two things you require, right? And both are part of the IP address. Okay, so we know that we have IP address in 4 octets, right? So these 4 octets contain the network address as well as the device address part, both part. Okay, so for that one, how we can define that which part is network address and which part is the device address in a particular IP address. For that, IP addresses are classified into different classes, that is from A to F. Okay, so there are five classes or 6 classes are defined. Okay, but we have to focus on only 3 classes, which I am going to show you on the next screen. Okay, and basis on the class, you can define the IP address, okay, in different categories, and based on these classes, you can identify which IP address belong to which category or which class. Okay, so now what is network class? An IP address consists of 2 components, as I said, network address and host address. The network address is used to find the network in which the computer or device is located, and after the network and the address identified, you have to look for the device address. Okay, so this addressing method divides the IP address into 5 separate classes on 4 address bits. So 4 address bits, right? We know that we have a 4 octets. So here class A, B, C offers addresses for network of 3 distinct network sizes. Class D is only for multicast and E respectively exclusive for experimental purpose, and F is also a separate one. So you have to focus on only the 3 classes, that is the class A, B and C. Right. So how much of any given addresses is the network part and how much is the host part is determined by the class of the network. So as I said that we have IP address with 4 decimal numbers in the decimal separators, right? So for that one, which part is going to be a network part and which part is going to be a part of your devices, which is classified by the network and host part. For example, if I talk about the class A, you can see that in class A, the first octet is defined as a network and the rest 3 are defined for the host. Okay, so that means in class A IP address, the first octet will represent the network. That means it will be reserved for the network, and rest 3 you can assign to your host. Okay, so if you have a network, you have a subnet where you have a multiple machines are running, the first one will be reserved as a network address and the rest you can define according to your requirements. Similarly, when we talk about the class B, in class B you have initial 2 octets reserved for the network address and the last 2 octets are reserved for the IP, your own device address. That means total 16 bits because we have a 4 octets and each octet is of 8 bit. So last 2 octets, that means total 16 bits are reserved for the device address, and initial 2 octets, that means initial 18 bits are reserved for the network address. Similarly, when we go to class C, the initial 3 octets are reserved for the network address and the last one is for the your devices. So now you can see from the screen as well, you can assign a large number of devices with the help of class A address because we have a 3 bits, or you can say we have a 3 octets are available as a device address, right? And when we go to class B and class C, in class C we have only 1 octet is available to assign to a devices and 3 are reserved for the network. So that means we will have a less number of devices in class C, okay, and we will have a highest number of devices in class A. Okay. So now number of hosts in each class and identify class of an IP. How many hosts? As I said that we have a certain part is reserved for the network, and then some part is reserved for the devices. So how many hosts are possible in a particular class? And if someone has given me an IP address, then how I can identify which class it belongs to? Okay. So for class A, as I said, in class A we have only the first octet is reserved for your network. Okay, so the first octet, the value would be is not from 1.2, is from 0 to, okay, it is from 0 to 127. Okay, so that means if someone has given you the IP address of which first octet value is between 0 to 127, that means a class A IP has been given to you. For example, I have given you an IP with 112.162.10.25, then you can see that 112 value fall between 1 to 127. That means this IP address belongs to class A. Okay, and how many devices or how many IPs we can assign in this particular IP is based on the number of octets available for the host or devices. So in class A we have 3 octets available for the host. That means we have total 24 bits are available. So we can calculate the number of IPs as 2 raised to the power 12. Okay, that means you have to multiply 224 times, because we have 3 octets. Each octet is of 8 value. That means 8 3 is 24. Then 2 raised to the power 24 is around 16 million. So that means in class A network, we can have the 16 million devices assigned an IP address. Now, when we come to the class B, where we have first 2 octets are reserved for the IP addresses, right, for the network. Okay, that means for that, the range for this particular class B is starting from 128 and it can go up to 191.255. Okay, so that means first 2 octets, if you see the first 2 octets, that will be from 128 to 191. Okay, for example, if I have given you the address of 175.162.10.25, then you can see that 175 is between 128 to 191. So if it is between 128 to 191, that means it belongs to class B. This IP is belong to class B IP. Okay, and now we have 2 octets are available for the devices. Okay, so that means 2 octets means we have 16 bits are available. So that means 2 raised to the power 16, which will come to around 65,536. So if you have a B class of IP address range or B class of IP address, then you can assign the 65,536 devices an IP address. Similarly, when we come to the class C, okay, so as I said, in class C we have only 1 octet available for to assign to devices. So that means hardly 255 devices we can assign the class C IP addresses. Okay, so how we can identify an IP address if it is belong to class C? That means for class C the range would start from 192 to 223. Okay, so that means if any IP that is starting with a value which is in between or to 192 to 223, it is belongs to the IP class C address. So here you can see that the IP I have given is 192, starting with 192, which is between 192 to 223. So that means this IP belongs to your class C, right? And now we have only 1 octet is available, right, available for the devices, and 1 octet means 8 bits. So we can calculate the number of IPs that is possible in class C, which is 2 raised to the power 8, and which will come to 255 numbers. Okay, and each octet, as I said, will have a range of 0 to 255. Okay, so now we have a different type of IP addresses, and the IP addresses are public, private, static, and dynamic. Okay, so public IP is very clear from the definition as well. If you want to connect with the internet, or if you have any laptop, PC, or any device at your home, or maybe in the offices that need to be connected with the internet, okay, for that you need a public IP. Okay, so that it can be recognized over the internet. So when we talk about the private IP, for that means you have a devices, maybe you are working in an organization where you don't need to access the internet, you don't need any communication to the outer world, you just need the communication in the internet between all the machines which you have inside your office or inside your home. Okay, so for that you can assign the private IP. Third is a static IP address. So static IP is a costly IP. Okay, and why it is costly? Because when we talk about the static IP, that means particular IPv4 IP is assigned to you. You are going to buy an IP from the IPv4 range, okay, from the service providers. Okay, so it is not going to change. I'm sure you have noticed a lot of time that when you reboot your devices, then IP address gets changed many times. Okay, that is not a static IP, that is a dynamic IP that is assigned to you by the internet service providers. Okay, so what happens is that we have billions of devices across the world. Okay, and if you compare it with the total number of IPv4 addresses that is possible for each and every device, which is only 4.3 billion. Okay, so practically what happens is that if in an organization, or maybe you are taking the internet services from a particular service provider, okay, they provide you a dynamic IP, okay, which is get changed. So the static IP assigned to the internet service provider or maybe to an organization, okay, and with the help of certain technologies, they assign a dynamic IP which is mapped with the static IP, okay, so that you can access the internet. Okay, so it is the same when you take some internet connection from some internet service provider. So the static IP will be purchased by your internet service provider, and the router that you have, it will be assigned with a dynamic IP. Okay, similarly in an organization where you connect to your internet machines, okay, along with that you access the internet as well. So your organization purchase few static IPs, and then inside the organization you will have a dynamic IP that it get changing whenever you reboot your system. This IP get changed because it is dynamic, and by this way they provide you the access to the internet. So this is all about the IP addresses. Okay, if you have any queries, then you can write back to me on the email ID that I have shown on the screen. Thanks for watching this video.